In times of challenge and in times when people are going through some of the hardest moments in life, specifically when someone goes through a divorce, everyone talks about the trauma during the divorce, but nobody teaches people how resilient people are able to rebuild themselves and what the next stage is after the divorce happens. Many times an abusive spouse, or a spouse that controlled all the finances, or a spouse that controlled a lot of the situation in a marriage, there's a lack of education from one side. Our guest today, Amy Adler, is the ultimate person who is speaking about what is the next stages after a divorce. What are the financial steps that somebody should take? What is the coaching that somebody needs to do? And is the definition of showing people how to be resilient throughout their entire life. It's not a comfortable topic to talk about divorce. It's not a comfortable topic to talk about what happens after a divorce. But Amy Adler is a person who's been addressing this, and she's been really an amazing person. She's a CPA, she's a CFE, she's a CDFA. I don't know what that part is, but I like that part because it sounds cooler. We're BFAs. I don't know what that is either, but
a lot of letters.
It's a lot of letters. It's a lot of letters. But Amy, we really appreciate you coming in. You're in Texas, so we had to dress a little warmer, so just to match the temperature. Amy, can you give us a 2-minute background about you and how you've gotten into this, and we'll get from there.
Sure. So thank you for that very kind intro. I've been a 20-something year accountant, worked in the corporate space in the audit and fraud and investigation and prevention realms until my own divorce, my second divorce, as a matter of fact, was when I had this aha moment that I really needed to be able to help other people through this process. Because even I, as a very financially savvy person, really struggled to get through the process and make good decisions on my own and my children's behalf in the process to prepare us for life afterwards. And so I really just decided that I was going to take the plunge into pivoting my career to be helping people with budgeting for life after divorce, with negotiating their settlements, with forensic accounting. So when I'm needed to help assess whether there's been hidden assets or if there's been the allegations of fraud in the divorce process, or even just wasteful spending, then I can be there as the support system for either one spouse or both. I can act as the mediator for both spouses to help them come up with their settlement and set them up financially in a way that's going to be successful for everyone involved, including the children. So I'm really passionate about it because it was so hard for me to go through it. And so now I'm able to marry my personal experience and my professional expertise to offer these services to the rest of the world.
But you've done even more, Amy. You've done, and I know because we've worked on it together, you're even telling people that are newly divorced, especially the women, I get here, said that all the financial advisors were on the husband's side. Now they're starting anew. You're even teaching them how to do their own taxes, let's say, if it's a simple situation. They don't need maybe a CPA. So you're actually putting yourself out of business, which is kind of ironic. But I know you don't do so many taxes anyway. But you're even teaching them how to do their own taxes and encouraging them to do it.
Yeah, I really love being able to empower people with knowledge and information to be able to do things themselves if they want to. I mean, a lot of people are intimidated by just the thought of having to file their own taxes because they've never done it before, and they don't realize that, especially if they're just W-2 employees, but even if they have fairly simple, self-employment situations as independent contractors, that they can actually use TurboTax or H&R Block or, even some of the free e-file sites to just get it done themselves. And then they don't have to pay somebody else to help them through that. They can save their money for other things that are more important for them.
What I find what I'm finding now in your career, and it's a new wave of people's careers, is that they're finding new businesses and new entrepreneurial paths through necessity. And we had people on the podcast also that were like, oh, well, I sold a business and I kept selling. I built businesses, sold businesses, and now I really love what I did. And now we can educate people to do it and help them through it instead of these practitioners who I worked in a big law firm, Skadden Arps, Kirkland Ellis, and I've dealt with transactions, and now I want to do it for my own. It's a different wave. It's really much more of a grassroots, ground up. We went through financial trouble, so because we went through financial troubles, we have an amazing way to explain to people and to get people out and know what the pitfalls are. I find that very common. Do you see that a lot with women who are going through divorce? You see what their next path is. Are they taking entrepreneurial steps? What are you seeing with on the next stages?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're absolutely right that this is really kind of the wave of the world, that we're moving from a very centralized corporate structure to a more decentralized, individualist, self-employed, entrepreneurial type of spirit. People are much more willing to take that leap because the corporate world still feels very soul-sucking to so many people that they feel much more empowered and able to create their own businesses now. It's happening more and more in the divorce space. You're also absolutely right. And with a lot of the women who have not been in the workforce for a long period of time because they left to raise children, or that was just their culture, was that they stayed home while their husbands worked. A lot of them are starting their own businesses. And as a matter of fact, what I'm seeing even more of that's been really heartwarming has been a lot of them feeling really inspired by me and the work that I do and wanting to get into their own way of helping people through the divorce process after their own divorces are finalized, because they realize how painful is for them and want to see other people avoid that pain and help in their own ways. So I've seen people become things like divorce coaches, life coaches, especially those who had an educational background in education or even therapists and child development type things. They end up becoming parent coaches, and so it's really beautiful kind of to see that this divorce process is kind of a spiritual awakening of sorts. People are really figuring out what they want to do with their lives and what their purpose is because of this pivotal moment that it's kind of fun to watch for me to see other people do the same thing that I did.
It's a recreation for people. They're able to recreate and start anew, and they already have a lot of information, a lot of experience that instead of somebody who's coming straight out of college, they can't really get that experience. They don't really understand that. But these are people who are going through, it's cliche, but the school of hard knocks. They're going through a really tough time, and now are able to take their schooling and their experience and marry it. For the women, let's just say the women who are necessarily taking care of the kids, taking care of the home and things like that, and they go through this divorce and they go through this traumatic moment in their life and they're trying to recreate, what would be a few tips that you would give them to just be careful of pitfalls that would come after a divorce? What would be some advice that you would give?
Well, the best advice that I can give is before they actually come to their settlement agreements and planning for their life after divorce, because what I see most often, especially with stay-at-home moms, is they want to keep their children's lives as stable as possible. And to do that, oftentimes they sacrifice themselves financially to make that happen, in that they want to keep the marital home, even though they don't have the income and the time to keep it up anymore. And then they also end up losing out on the opportunity to invest more diversely in things like what you all can help them do, because they've got all of their assets tied up in the equity in the house when they negotiate to have this house. And so I really encourage them to think about, at a more emotional level, what's really best for the kids. Is it best for them, for mom to be strapped for cash and to be stressed out all the time and to not have enough time to keep the house clean because now there's only one adult living there? All the things that come along with that. Is that really worth it? And how are you going to pay for it, in the future? How are you going to pay the mortgage and keep food on the table and extracurricular activities and all of the things, and have a life for yourself, travel, do all the things that you're wanting to do. So in my process with women, especially, I really spend time with them, asking them, what do they want their lives to look like after the divorce is final? And let's think about how we need to structure your settlement and your life afterwards, your income, all of those things, so that we can set you up financially for success in that life.
We find that with a lot of people. I mean, not just in this situation, but other difficult situations, people who don't have so much experience in talking about money and what it means and how they want to move forward with that. But they also, sometimes we see that they're afraid to talk about it. They're afraid of what the results are going to be. What they're going to find out is that, like you in this example, exactly, that they're not going to be able to maintain their marital home. And maybe not even just for the kids, but for themselves as well. They want to at least have that comfort going forward. But what we talk is money. We say it's money talks, and something that we want to be comfortable. And I think that's why we get along so well, is because we're all on the same page that way. We want to make it comfortable and as easy as possible, but also getting to really the core of what the issues are. And that's really the only way to go forward and solve that. Now, Amy, you also told me that recently you're starting a new organization. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, I'm actually really excited about this. I and a couple of business partners are on a mission to educate. I think I mentioned that a little bit ago, that I love empowering people with information so that they can make their own decisions, with the knowledge of what that looks like for them down the road. So we have developed a concept called Life Transitions University. And what we're going to do is develop courses that will all be self-study online, and maybe some live courses as well, available to the general public to learn how to understand what finance decisions and what issues come up and how to plan best for the various transitions that they're going to experience in their lives. The four main transitions being birth and adoption, marriage, divorce, and death. And the goal is to not only educate, but also just to remove some of that stigma and taboo around money, around talking about and thinking about money. And going back to your question, Yair, about pitfalls that stay-at-home moms and those who weren't as financially savvy fall into, it's a shame around not knowing how to handle their money, or what it looks like, or how to budget, or even how to use different software. It's not embarrassing. It shouldn't be shameful that was their situation. It should not be a conversation killer to talk about money, because money is energy, and it's a part of life. It's something that we all need to be able to live and to exist and to live comfortably, to David, to your point, to live easily. And it should be something that should be a comfortable topic, in addition to comfort for you to experience money and be able to live on it. So
we find people who don't talk about money or happen to be the one that isn't making as much money. If you're not talking about money in your workplace, and you're not having those discussions, you never know if you're being underpaid, or if there's better opportunities out there, or the person that got in there, how did they find the right recruiter, or the right accountant, or the right financial advisor, or it doesn't really make a difference. If you're not talking about money, money tends to run away from you. And it doesn't need to be the conversation and find out everybody's W-2 and tax return, but having the conversations around money is so crucial. And I find that we've seen a lot of sociopathic spouses that try to put their wives or their spouses in this little bubble, and that they cannot talk about money. It's taboo. They just sit, do your thing, and I'm going to bring in the money. And it's really an abusive relationship. I know
it's a control mechanism.
It's a control mechanism. And it's whenever there's a conversation of, oh, can you take care of the kids? And you go, well, I'm the one that feeds the kids with money. It's not really equal, and we see that a lot with a lot of conversations, and it really bothers us, and we really try to empower people. How are you empowering women? Let's just say, it could be men also, because I've seen also on the male side. How are you empowering women to understand that it's going to be okay, and that they don't have to just be abused for the rest of their lives by this spouse just because he makes a couple shekels?
Well, I end up being the first line of defense for a lot of people going through or considering the divorce process. I always encourage my colleagues to, refer me to those folks when they're thinking about it before they've actually made the decision to file, because then I can have that conversation with them about it is going to be okay. You are going to be fine. Here's some of the, protections that are in place in the country, depending on what state you're located in. But here's some of the protections that are available. And a lot of them come to me saying, my spouse says that they're going to take everything from me. They're going to lock me out of everything. They're going to, take me for everything that I have, and I'm never going to see another dime. And I have to remind them that, to your point, Yair, just a minute ago, that's a mechanism for controlling you, and that it's actually not true, because
it's a scare tactic.
It is. It's a scare tactic. So, I can't always convince them that they're going to be okay. That's some inner work that they have to do on their own and have to kind of come to it in their own time. But I can help them look at the numbers, and I can help them understand what they have rights to. I'm not an attorney and I don't give legal advice, but I always tell them that actually that puts me in a better position than attorneys, because I can tell them how it really works, how the system really works.
100%.
And I can give them a real talk. And sometimes it's a little bit of tough love, but also for some reason I have a way of being able to communicate that in a way that is digestible and not scary for people. So I love having those conversations.
Yeah.
I think it's super important, just because, we've seen a lot with some divorced women. They'll get an attorney that somehow they found this attorney in their area, and the attorney, when come to them, maybe sometimes it's too late. Document is really not so good. The attorney didn't do such a great job. So it's so important to have an extra source of resource to go to be able to bounce that off. So we'll have, part of our network will offer a divorce attorney. They'll review our clients' documents, for free as a complimentary, coming part of our network. But I can't tell you how many times we've seen that this document is really not so good, and they cut some corners here, and maybe it's too late, maybe it's not. But to have someone to come back to you as a resource, and to us as well, it's really critical.
Yeah, I always say that the government and attorneys really have no business being involved in family law. It really should be up to the financial experts and the child development experts to make the decision, to help people make these decisions in the divorce space, because you're right. Attorneys really don't oftentimes fully understand how the language that they write gets executed in the financial world. And same thing with the children. The standard custody arrangements that exist out there are usually not in the best interest of the children involved. So it's a very complex environment and in a really broken system. And that kind of takes me back to the point about the Life Transitions University is intended to help arm people with information before they end up in the divorce or the probate space. I always say your marriage is going to end one way or another in death or divorce, unless you're lucky enough to sink on the Titanic together. And either way, you need to understand your financial situation, right? So, if your spouse passes away or if you get divorced, in either situation, you need to be able to take control of your finances and move forward on your own. So it's less taboo of a conversation before people get married or before they are even thinking about divorce to talk about planning for these things in a way that that sets them up for success, regardless of which one of those scenarios happens to them.
I think it even goes beyond divorce, because, my own parents, it's a different generation. My mother passed away before my father, but my mother, like if it was the opposite, my mother didn't know anything about finances, and my father was a CPA, and maybe that made it worse. I don't know, because it seems like the CPAs, they don't disclose anything to their spouse. My mother, I don't think she know how to even write a check. So if it would have been the opposite way around, it would have been super difficult.
Yeah, and normally, statistically, it is the other way around. Women outlive their husbands. So you're absolutely right. The generational changes. I think that is for the better, that more that the younger generations are learning more and having more control and understanding of their finances. But it's still a problem. It's still something that plenty of women have no idea how to write a check or how to deal with their financial situation when they get divorced or when their husbands pass away. So it's very important. And so with this Life Transitions University, in order to reach enough people, we're actually going to be building educational materials for the professionals in the different financial services industries to be able to educate your clients about these kinds of situations, because you're the ones who are actually working with them in these periods of time when they're going through some of these earlier transitions, but also some of the later ones. And you can empower them with this same information that we do, that I do, but you can do it before they come to me for the divorce. So the goal is to train financial advisors, realtors, mortgage lenders, bankers, insurance agents, all of the people who have some type of finance careers and who work with the public who are going through any of those major life transitions, whether having babies, getting married, or if they're going through divorce or inheriting money, any of those things, they're all relevant and important to most of us. And we can make better informed decisions if we have people like y'all in our corner giving us that information when we're making the initial investment decision.
Yeah, we find a lot of times that people think that somebody knows about money because they have money, but they really don't necessarily. Like, how many people inherit money? It's the classic joke. It's like, oh yeah, he came with 2 cents in his pocket, but he had like $1 million in the bank because his pockets were like just filled with tissues or whatever. But he couldn't rub 2 nickels together because he couldn't get change from the meter. But he had a couple buildings in Iran when he came over. It was really challenging for him. But it's people think that people know about money when they don't necessarily do, and they'll give advice about money when they don't necessarily have the education and the background behind it. So it really is a challenge. I also would and I'm sure you're talking to like the rabbis of the community and the priests and the imams and the leaders of the community are also need to have some form of financial literacy, and it's a big problem in the country. How are you seeing that? Are you seeing opposition to trying to bring financial literacy, especially in this space, or are you being welcomed with open arms?
Yeah, I haven't received any resistance from people. It's all been very positive appreciation for this education. And a lot of people, I think most people say they wish that this was covered in school, in high school, so that kids came out of school knowing this stuff, and at a minimum in college. And none of it is. None of it's required. So starting the conversation really seems to be positive with everyone that I've come in contact with. So yeah, I have really high hopes.
So I like to do these rapid fire rounds when we have good professionals on the line. Can you give us, and my dad will go first because he's prepared for his rapid fire round, even though he's not.
I'm not really prepared, but let's see.
Have you ever been prepared?
Let's see how
the
it goes.
Ultimate question.
Many times.
Yes, it's a Zoom suit. What would be a tip for somebody who's going through a divorce, going after a divorce, or pre-divorce? Dad, we're going to start with you at rapid fire round.
I would say the first tip would be to talk to professionals beforehand and just get an idea of what's coming, and before you take that next step. So that you're not going to be overwhelmed, you're not going to be subject to these scare tactics that perhaps the spouse will give, and we've seen that ourselves Yair. We have that that the spouse can give, and because I think even just to go a little further, even it's people that we find that are financially in trouble, let's say that are having difficulty, you always feel you're so alone. That's always the issue. Like, you think you're the only one that's suffering this, and you're in the worst situation possible. There's no way out, but you need that hand to help you and support you. So that, I think, was reach out to someone and someone, but it's got to be also the right person. Someone like Amy, or someone like ourselves, of course. to get started. So that's my first tip.
That was an Amy tip, by the way. She said that exact tip before.
You didn't qualify. You didn't
That's
say.
why I said to you,
couldn't say
you weren't
anything that hadn't been
prepared.
said before.
I knew you weren't prepared. Amy,
you didn't say anything that just made sense.
Amy, you're up.
Thank you. I would say that don't make the assumption that the attorneys are the end all be all and that that's where you should start, because it's probably the last place you should go. There are so many other professionals who are much better equipped to assist in the planning process for divorce and also going through it, who can help you figure out your financial stuff before you start handling and dealing with the litigation, that can save you tons of money, time, and stress going through that divorce process.
My tip is not going to be a shameless plug like you two, but my tip will be get all the passwords, get all the accounts, get all the bank accounts before you actually understand that you're going to go through a divorce. So make sure that you have statements of everything before you do that, because all of a sudden, all that's going to change. So I would say get an accounting, your own personal accounting, get logins for everything before you actually get in there. That's going to be, it's that control factor that people have. And why would they not change the passwords? If you said, oh, I'm coming after all your, if they feel that you're coming after all their money, they're going to hide all their money from you. So try to gather information as much as you can slowly get yourself prepared for the eventual outcome. One more tip.
Yeah, I would actually one up that a little bit. Yeah,
Right,
Yair, thanks for calling me out for my shameless plug.
It's fine. And my dad, don't worry. It wasn't just you. It was also my dad's shameless 8 plugs.
Bother me. It doesn't bother me at all.
It's shameless. We don't care. It's all good. It's just, not in addition to getting the passwords, because you did point out that the passwords could be changed once you file for divorce, or at least let your spouse know that that's what you're thinking about. Make sure that you're actually getting copies of the most recent statements for all of the accounts, so that you actually have your full account numbers, whose name they're in. And that way you can make sure that somebody whether it's an attorney, whoever it is that's working through the process, can ensure that all of the right documents are received to prepare the marital estate and get it ready to divide.
Absolutely. Dad, do you have another tip?
Well, we've also, just along those same kind of lines, we've had some experience also that, there's been like some tax issues as well. Like sometimes the spouse, the husband will put the taxes on the wife, and all of a sudden she's responsible for like 80%. Oh, it's just because, we're going to structure it this way or that way. And then the spouse ends up with this huge tax bill or this huge tax problem. So that's something also I think you want to prepare for and be able to address, because that could be something that sinks the ship as well.
My tip would be,
it's a good one.
That is a good one. He didn't steal.
Amy's turn.
All right, Amy, you're next.
Amy's turn.
Right.
So the next tip would be, make sure you have a really good therapist on your team who you can talk with on a regular basis to air out all of your emotional challenges that you're experiencing while going through it. Because A, your attorney is much more expensive for you to pay to be your therapist. And B, you need support to be able to hang on through the process so that you don't make a decision that's not in your best interest just to make it be over because you can't stand it anymore. So get the mental health support that you need.
That's a really great tip. It's really surround yourself with the right people. Amy, there was a point in your life of resilience that you decided.
Yeah, you owe us a tip.
I'm skipping my last tip. My last tip really is be conscious of the children. Do not fight in front of the children. Have separate conversations. Try to compartmentalize as much as possible. You don't want to traumatize your kids, and you don't want to turn one against another. I think that's a huge. People will use the kids in divorce, and I see it all the time. But make sure that you compartmentalize your children and put them in a separate bucket. When you're with them, smiles, happiness, and that's in every point in life, versus just arguing in front of them, which you might have done during the marriage. So do a quick thing to change. Amy, going to you, what was there? There's a defining moment in somebody's life that allows them to become this resilient person, which you are. What would be the defining moment in your life that you would say has helped you and guided you to be strong during this difficult time for people?
It was my second divorce. And really, I would say most clearly was several months after my second divorce ended. I'd been through a really hard time because that divorce went all the way to trial. And so it took a year for it to finalize. And then several months even after that was when I had this revelation, when I was in the middle of a self-care moment, because I was in a yoga class. And at the end of it was when I had this revelation that I needed to do this work. And it was because I had taken the time after my divorce was final to heal emotionally and physically, because it really did a number on me physically as well. And then I was able to have this moment of, oh my gosh, this is where I need to take my life, because it feels so powerful. And so the resilience came from the divorce, but also then came from this like power within me that said that now I have the ability to help other people that I never would have had before had I not gone through this myself.
It's very deep, and that's amazing. And it sounds like it was a real trauma, and it sounds like you used that trauma into something better. And that's really what people are doing. I had a conversation just before this, was talking to a woman who, her business is to help people, and she was talking about how she was raped and all this really terrible stuff that happened to her. But her business is to empower people who are going through trauma and turn that into a strength. And that's really what you did. And that's the whole point of Resilient Riches, and you helping people, and you're paying it forward, because I'm sure people helped you, and you're doing it for other people. And it's really not easy. Can you tell us a little bit where people can find you? Give us a little plug about the new venture that you're doing, but tell us how people can get in contact with you.
Sure. So the new venture actually has not officially started. So there's nothing available to find that just yet. So stay tuned for that information in the future. But to find my divorce business, yourdivorceasset.com is my website. And also you can follow Your Divorce Asset on Instagram, or you can go to Facebook and look for Adler Divorce Financial. Or you could actually follow me as a person, Amy Adler, on TikTok for lots of videos. I really like to post educational information and just share it. So it's all out there on social media, or you
LinkedIn
can
also, right, Amy? Because I think that's where we met each other, on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, that's right. I have a profile on LinkedIn as well. So yes, you can find me there too, to connect with me directly, and I'll help as best I can. I always help everyone who reaches out, no matter what their situation.
That's amazing. And we've seen it firsthand, and we really appreciate it. That's why we've been in contact for the last few years, just talking about different ways to help people and to empower people. And it's something that you're doing every single day. So we really appreciate what you're doing. You're changing the world, and you're paying it forward. And I hope people from this podcast and from and our audience listens to this and understands that you're not alone, and that there's people that can help you. And if you take out all my dad's shameless plugs, Amy, no shameless plugs for you. You didn't do it. My dad did it. If you take those out, but it's really about finding the correct people to be in contact with, not just people who you think is right. Make sure they're vetted, make sure that they understand, make sure you talk to references, make sure that you really get an understanding of who's actually in your corner, because this is the fight of your life. And if you don't have a good coach, it's going to be a big problem. So, Amy, we really appreciate what you're doing. We really appreciate you coming on. We'd love to have you on again after you launch. And I didn't know you were on TikTok, because I'm not on TikTok, but it's awesome that you are. Thank you so much for coming. We'll see everybody on the next one.
Thanks
for listening, everyone.
Thank you.